Hey there everyone, it's AJ back again for the Mighty Gluestick channel. I make videos about Dungeons and Dragons full-time thanks to your generous support, shares and views, with multiple uploads every week to help share the rich history of monsters, locations and mythologies of D&D. Time for another rambling vlog-style video where I talk about the Dungeons and Dragons, particularly the most frequent topic of questions and conversations I get during my many live streams, which most of you will not have watched all the way through, though a surprising number of you seem to really enjoy watching them or listening to them afterwards, which is very humbling, thank you. For those of you who wondered, I usually upload or start a live stream twice a week, once on, if you're over in the States, in California, it would be 7 p.m. on Saturday and Wednesday. First topic is the ascension of powerful beings to godhood and the extent of powers and influence of the overgod Ao. Well, Ao is not a multiverse-wide entity. Ao is a Forgotten Realms entity whose power doesn't even extend to the entire planet of Toril. However, over that whole continent, Ao has supreme veto power over all the entities and all the deities who operate there. This means Ao has no say in what happens on the celestial court of Karatur, no say in what goes on in the mysterious island continent of Osi, no say in what happens in Mastica, and certainly no influence at all in what happens in Kryn, Oath, Athos, Mystara, Narath, or Ravnica. So when asking about the uplifting of extremely powerful entities and what it takes to become a god, Ao is only involved if it involves and concerns Faerun. In such an instance, Ao does have ultimate say in who or what becomes a god or not, and there is no way around it. At one point, there was an attempt to upset this absolute authority, involving those super powerful artifacts called the Tablets of Fate, which determine the rules of divine domains and such, but this just served to piss Ao off, and resulted in a really bad time for all of the gods, who got busted back to mortal status, within the realm of Faerun anyway, some of them even temporarily getting killed. In other world settings, there is nothing much by way of lesser gods, and in some, all of the gods are more like super powerful mortals, with very little influence in any other plane of existence. Some gods are represented on many planes at the same time, such as Tiamat and Moradin. They are true trans-dimensional entities. Gods can and do travel from one plane to and one setting to another. The world of Narath is a perfect example of gods that have travelled from there to the world of Toril, as is the ancient Egyptian pantheon that travelled to Faerun in pursuit of their stolen earthling population which made up the Mulan people in ancient Imaskar. Yes, gods do get killed. More often than not, they come back again. You could say that as long as the name and nature of a god is known, there is a chance that can be resurrected. As such, part of the destruction of God must involve ensuring that all traces of that God's identity are erased from the minds of the multiverse, which is beyond the scope of the vast majority of mortal beings, even super powerful ones. If you're traveling through the astral plane, for instance, and you see all these corpses of long dead gods, for instance, a lot of them are just unknown. People have the knowledge of who they were has been lost. Otherwise, there's a good chance over the eons that have followed that they may have been returned to the dead by followers or some such. Second topic is the role of authenticity in Dungeons and Dragons, and you'll often hear me say the word canon a lot, or the word canonologically. Even I have trouble saying that, which I'm not sure is even a word. But what I'm talking about, of course, is things that have been printed in books produced by the companies who have, and still do, create Dungeons and Dragons. We call this stuff official material, and there's a spectrum to this, and here's how I break it down. If something is RPGA or Role-Playing Game Association, or as it's known these days as D&D Adventurers League legal, that means it is stock standard, generic, default, vanilla D&D that you can expect to be the same wherever you go. So if somebody's playing an Adventure League game, you know what the material is going to be. Just below that is everything published for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, the current edition, which means whatever material from the lore of the game happens to have been written or rewritten by Wizards of the Coast staff and published as in a hardcover book for the current edition. Well, that's the most current official content, for better or for worse. Beyond that, it starts to get a lot more complicated. A lot of people will play the game and ignore anything that was published in 4th edition. A smaller percentage ignore a lot of the changes made to the Forgotten Realms in general, and some fans of Planescape also ignore the events of the faction war. Most people put content written by third parties somewhere on the spectrum of homebrew, with excellent quality resources like Kobold Press's Tome of Beasts almost on a par with legit D&D publications. You'll find that that book is welcome at most tables. However, that scale is very very subjective. For instance, sites like wiki pages range from the Forgotten Realms wiki, which is very reliable, to the D&D wiki, and the curation of the wiki pages plays a huge important role in this credibility, particularly if it comes to a DM allowing a homebrew race, class, or a bit of equipment into the game. In any event, authenticity of materials only really matters for official public events, where conformity is quite important, as people would expect to be able to leave one game table and join another with the exact same game material on offer. The same sort of rules apply. When running a game for others online, or with minimum prep time for discussion and customization, without that, all-important session 0, some players and dungeon masters will know what to expect. If you see the phrase core books only, the DM is usually saying that they'll only accept characters, spells, and equipment from the player's handbook. Though this doesn't mean that they'll only be throwing creatures and locations from the Dungeon Master's Guide and Monster Manual. Dungeon Masters who are just starting out often feel free to restrict players, and they should feel free to restrict players to just take on the core material found in the player's handbook, or at least until the DM is confident enough to take on other stuff, but it's their option. Players who have the okay to use homebrew material from the DM should be courteous enough to at least print out some sheets detailing what the material is and give a copy to the DM, even if it's just a copy of the PDF in question or the file or wiki page, so that they have access to the same information the player has. As for people talking about their own homebrew games and such, well, anything goes, and nobody has the right to tell you how to play your own private games. Everyone knows that the official material often goes out the window as soon as the character sheets hit the game table anyway, and the story starts to flow. So it's largely unimportant when you're talking about personal games and things. Nobody has the right to tell you how to play, particularly me. That just brings us to the third thing I wanted to talk about, which is Magic the Gathering. And I may have jumped the gun when I said in the community tab on YouTube that the debate was over and the Magic the Gathering's world setting was now basically interwoven into D&D officially. I am getting the impression, by how vague Wizards of the Coast is being, that they are waiting to see how everything goes with the Ravnica release, and I can see their point of view, and I think this is the wise thing to do, despite my rabid desire to see Ravnica, Phyrexia, Dominaria, and the rest integrated fully into the Planescape default multiverse cosmology of Dungeons & Dragons. It really doesn't matter overly much for the time being if it is or isn't. As it is, you can run a game completely within Ravnica as a standalone setting, just like you could run a game completely within Toril. The issue is, and what I have an issue with, what if you do some actual planeswalking while on Ravnica? Where do you go? Personally, while I know you can run D&D all sorts of ways, picking and choosing how the fantasy game goes. For instance, the world settings all have interesting restrictions and freedoms, such as the heavy restrictions and consequences behind magic and technology on the world of Athos for the Dark Sun setting, or the restrictions on planar travel on the world of Eberron, and also the very different setup for religions and the lack of gods there. But Ravnica is a world that features planeswalkers. Magic the Gathering is centered around the theme of cross-dimensional travel. If all you have as a resource officially is this one world, and you're avoiding any planes travel, then it's kind of like playing Star Wars with no Jedi. I should know, I bought and played Star Wars Edge of the Empire, and it's possible to play a Zero Force Voodoo Star Wars campaign, but you can feel the absence. As a Magic the Gathering player, and by the way, Magic the Gathering Arena, free to download and play, massive fun, I'm a huge fan, I'm absolutely determined to blend in Magic the Gathering Planes of Existence into D&D, this multiverse. It's extremely easy to do. You'll see me do it on my channel from here on going forward. That's my attitude. If you don't like it, too bad. Because these are just additional spheres in the phlogiston if you are spelljamming, or just additional prime material locations, or even just demi-planes or realms within the astral sea or inner planes, or border zones or of the outer planes. Even in some cases, some corner of the abyss that the demons have not totally invaded yet. The abyss is a very, very big place, and the hordes of the Tanari are not infinite after all. If Ravnica is just a new world setting where you can play the core of D&D as a role-playing rule set, but without the spelljamming and without the planescaping included, then that is okay as well for the time being. But I am not a huge fan personally of setting my games in locations where there is no capacity for planar travel, particularly if we're talking about Magic the Gathering, because that would kind of miss the whole point of Magic the Gathering. Last topic. Aside from people asking me when I'm going to start talking about about Ravenloft, I assure you it's coming. I was just chatting with a Ravenloft sage on Discord about it last night, taking notes to help get me started on where to get started, so to speak. Last topic is evil. The nature of creatures that are born evil. And I often fall back to this video where I talked about the Oni. And the example is, what if you have an Oni, a member of a monstrous humanoid race of magic-capable giants who are sadistic and brutal eaters of other intelligent humanoids, particularly humans? What if one of them is raised from infancy completely within human society and every effort is made to teach them right from wrong, conditioning them in human morality and instilling the values of family, laws, and ethical dietary habits? Well, raising a cat as a vegan might seem to work, though seriously, don't do that. It's a horrible thing to do to a cat, and they will live a short and miserable life. But the moment that cat sees a bird, they will want to catch it and play with it. And by play, I mean torment and slowly murder it. Even if they're not sure if they can eat it or not, the instinct to be a predator is still there, and no amount of avocado or nurturing is going to override what nature has bred into them. An Oni will not feel a sense of family connection. They will not feel sad when someone gets hurt. They'll feel happy and amused. They will find the smell of a human not just pleasant, it is downright delicious. An Oni will not understand why it can't use its full strength and size to murder the kid that bullies it on the street. They will not see that they'll see that these negative social consequences exist for violence and murder for the most part, and learn to avoid bringing those consequences down on them, but they will not feel that murder is wrong. They will not feel any regret for hurting other creatures. That emotional framework, that instinct to be part of a society, is just not there. They're blind to it. They are not beholden to it. You can explain to them what love is, but they'll never feel it. This idea that you can instill into basically any creature, if you try hard enough, is wishful thinking. It is projection, otherwise known as anthropomorphism, the attribution of human characteristics or behaviors to a god, animal, or object. An Oni, a goblin, an elf is not a human. They don't think the way that we do. They don't feel the same we do. If you manage to get an elf good and mad at you, for example, see what happens. Elven society, elven empires, self-destructed because of feuds and wars of hatred and vengeance. They are creatures of Vulcan emotions, or more accurately, when talking about ancient elven kingdoms, of Romulan emotions. Combine that with the knowledge that they have, that they've lived before and will live again and again, and you have a powder keg of emotion that, if pushed into action, will see the source of aggravation as even more expendable than themselves. And fighting someone who doesn't care which of you dies is quite horrific and alien to your average human. But elves are not human. Vampires once were human, or some other species capable of becoming a vampire, and may have been a good person. Hell, they might have been a vegan. But when they die, they are dead. They are reanimated by a supernatural force. They are not like a lich that just happens to crave blood. They are a blood-consuming super predator that wears the shell of a former living creature and makes use of whatever memories that shell once called its own. Vampires are not living. They are not human. They are not good. They feel no remorse. They feel nothing but a hunger for blood that can never be sated. They will emulate emotions if they can see any way that doing so will get them better access to more blood. It's actually a very easy calculation to make. As a DM, or perhaps someone playing a vampire, this is what action you can take. Will this action get me closer as that vampire to drinking more blood without increasing my chances of being staked through the heart, beheaded, and burned to ash? If yes, then that's the only correct course of action. Anything else is basically a threat to their survival, a threat to their junky cravings for that red liquid that they would do literally anything to get more of. Vampires are not good creatures. They may once have been before they died, but that soul is departed and residing in whatever afterlife it was destined for, which is some mercy, really. If you do manage to somehow cure the vampire and raise that corpse from the dead, that soul will have no recollection of being a vampire because it wasn't there. So, feel free to tell me exactly how wrong I am in the comment section down below. I'm always up for a friendly debate. As always, thanks for listening, everyone. I'll be back with more for you very soon.